Thank you for joining us around the fire. For more information or to make a donation, please visit randomactsnetwork.com. Now, want to hear a scary story? After a lifetime of sharing a bed with her mother or sleeping on the couch, Deena went to sleep in a room of her own. She found herself staring at the ceiling until it was light outside, reliving the bizarre events from earlier and feeling more alone than ever before. Still, she pulled herself out of bed in the late morning and got dressed. It was her first day at Haddington, and she was determined to make the most of it. She stepped into the hallway and went down the stairs, rounding the corner and into the kitchen. Despite the sunny day, the house itself remained dark, the kitchen especially shadowy. Olivia sat in darkness at the kitchen counter, staring forward with a look of utter emptiness. "Morning, Mom," Deena said. Only small slivers of light snuck in through the gaps around the window coverings, and her mother was mostly silhouette. "Are you okay?"
"Is it morning?"
Olivia asked, turning toward Deena for the first time. Even in the gloom of the dark room, Deena could tell that her mother looked exhausted.
"Oh, of course it is."
Deena stared at her mother as the woman placed a shaky hand against her temple.
I'm not feeling well,"
Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I get you something?" Deena asked.
"It's my head."
Her mother said, turning away once again. Deena waited for her to share more, but the woman was quiet. "I'll get you some water," Deena suggested. "Did you eat?"
"I'm not hungry."
Olivia mumbled.
"Maybe I'll make some coffee."
"You know what coffee does to you on an empty stomach," Deena replied, placing a glass of water on the table in front of her mom.
"You're right, sweetheart. Thank you."
Deena watched with concern as her mother weakly swallowed a few gulps of water. She'd seen her deal with migraines before, but this seemed especially awful.
"I think I'll just go back to bed for a bit, but don't let me stop you from having fun today."
Olivia tried to smile, but gave up almost immediately.
"Why don't you take a few resumes around town, and by the time you're back, I'll be up and at 'em?"
Deena wasn't thrilled by the idea of leaving her mother alone, but there wasn't much she could do anyway. "Just get some rest, and I'll be back in a bit." Deena decided to check out a few different spots within walking distance and headed to the grocery store first. A young associate let her know that they weren't actively hiring, but she could fill out an application and they'd call when something opened up. Next, she headed to the library, which Deena was surprised to learn was the most popular place to work in Haddington. Positions didn't vacate often, and when they did, they filled quickly. So, she took a few minutes to snag a library card before heading to her next destination, the video rental store. Haddington Video was bursting with shelves, each overflowing with VHS tapes and boxed candy and treats. Flickering fluorescents appropriately showcased large posters from the biggest new releases along the walls. Ridiculous titles like Battle Space Galacta Wars and Attack of the Living Slime, and somehow 4 different Nicole Kidman movies at once. A bored young man with shaggy hair stood behind the counter, idly flipping through a magazine. Excuse me," Deena said, approaching the counter. "Do you know if you're hiring?" The guy looked up and shrugged. Only now did Deena realize that the magazine cover depicted yet another Nicole Kidman movie, a detective film co-starring an animated alien. "Do you have an application or something?" Deena asked.
"Oh, yeah."
Deena could almost see the gears slowly starting up behind his eyes.
"Let me grab one from the back."
Deena waited as he stepped through the door marked employees only, followed by a low sounds of whispered conversation. A minute or so later, the young man returned, accompanied by a middle-aged man in a frumpy, ill-fitting suit, who offered to conduct an impromptu, and somewhat casual, he assured her, job interview. Deena was more than comfortable chatting her way through situations like these, always able to quickly conjure up stories of solving a crisis or providing great customer service. Whether it was true or not was nobody's business but her own. Before she knew it, Deena was set to shadow Jake for the rest of the shift and learn the ropes. She called her home phone, but her mother didn't answer, so she left a message with the number for the video store and that she'd be home after closing. Do things always move so quickly around here? Jake laughed.
No, it's usually the same old shit. Moving at the pace of a fucking snail stuck in...
Molasses? Deena asked. Now Jake really laughed.
Yeah, so much molasses out there in the wild, You really gotta watch out.
Shut up, Deena replied, playfully.
Ron's been wanting to hire a few people, but there's not really any interest.
Deena was surprised. She'd certainly expected the video store to be more enticing of a job than the library, even to those who didn't care much for movies.
Most other kids our age aren't trying to close every night and weekends for minimum wage. But since the dude's never around, I just get high, like, all the time.
Deena found herself surprised once again. With the boss ready to pop out and interview her at a moment's notice, she assumed he was the type to practically live there.
Nah, he's only here when he has to be. Basically runs shit from the telephone, probably in his bed. Like, he's probably not even wearing pants.
They each laughed, then shuddered at the thought of it.
Ew.
I gotcha, Deena said, feeling more comfortable than she had all day. I'm excited to get to work.
Don't be,
Jake said, grabbing his keys and motioning for her to follow towards the back.
This is about as busy as it gets.
The store was empty.
We sometimes get a small rush on the weekends if something really big comes out. We were pretty busy for a few months straight when Space Jelly hit VHS.
He looked at Deena with sudden sincerity.
And let me tell you, Space Jelly fans do not rewind their tapes.
Deena laughed, but Jake did not. She could tell that he was really damaged from the trauma of rewinding all of those returns.
This is the storage closet.
He unlocked a skinny door and revealed a small closet with a broom and a mop and a few other cleaning supplies. There was one shelf of snack foods and some piles of video cases.
We pretty much just spot clean, so don't worry about vacuuming every night or anything like that. Plus, the ugly carpet hides all the stains.
Deena looked down at the colorful but faded carpeting, a cartoon fever dream of living popcorn buckets, dancing hot dogs, clapboards, and stars. The bell above the door rang, and a woman entered with a tall stack of videos in her hand.
Watch and learn, new girl.
Jake headed back towards the counter.
Welcome to Haddington Video, where every film's a blockbuster.
A few hours later, Deena found herself settling into the warm passenger seat of Jake's pickup. She would normally accept a ride from a borderline stranger, but they'd ended up talking nonstop for the rest of the shift, and it kind of felt like they were old friends already.
Left or right?
Jake asked as he pulled out of the parking lot. Left, Deena said. We'll pass through town and then go another mile or so. Jake gasped so loudly it made Deena jump, then sported a massive grin.
You live on Skeer Street?
It's the first house on Skeer Street, she said. Is that like the nickname?
You actually haven't heard.
His eyes bounced from the road to Deena and back as he taunted her playfully. What are you talking about? Jake threw his hands up as if there was nothing he could do.
Let's just say that your new home has a bit of a reputation.
She thought he'd say more, but he didn't, and for a moment they continued down the dark road in silence. Deena had felt all along that there was something off about her house, but this was the first time she'd had preferred to be wrong.
People have told stories about Skeer Street for years. Half the houses are empty, but I'm pretty sure all of them are haunted.
Shut up, Deena said. Do you really believe that? Jake looked over at her before returning his eyes to the road.
You sound like you want me to say that I don't.
I want you to say what you think is true, she said.
I don't normally believe in ghosts and all that stuff. But with Skeer Street, I do.
Great, she said as she looked out her window. Just another thing to add to my list.
Hey, you're part of the Haddington video family now. I'm not letting you fight your demons alone.
He winked at her with a genuine smile. How nice of you, she said with a tinge of bitterness. Are there any stories about my house?
I don't know for sure, but it's been empty for years. Kids used to dare each other to go inside or try to stay overnight. Supposedly a few of them never made it out.
Ooh, how original, Deena teased. And people see the spirits of evil witches and little pale children running around.
Hey now, I was once a little pale child running around. You think I'm a ghost?
They laughed together.
It's fine. I know I glow in the dark. I've gotten that before.
But I interrupted you. What about the dude who sold us the place?
No idea,
Jake said, lighting a joint and blowing smoke out the window.
Bunch of different families in and out over the years. Some would make it a few months, some a few days. Most never left. And, oh, there.
He pointed out Deena's window at the silhouette of a wide stone building.
That's the police station past the park. And in a few blocks, there's that big church. You've probably seen it?
Yeah.
Supposedly, there's a secret passage between those two buildings and other places too. The original settlers here put in tunnels. Nobody I know has ever seen them, but it's pretty much common knowledge.
Tunnels? Deena asked. What would they be used for?
Probably storage, moving supplies, prohibition, maybe trash. Anything the town would have wanted to keep out of the public eye.
Deena was seriously creeped out. She could tell Jake was deadly serious. God, this place is weird, she said, leaning her head on the window.
Don't I fucking know it?
Jake laughed, placing his hand on Deena's knee. He glanced at her sheepishly before retreating.
Sorry. My bad.
It's okay, Deena said.
You want a hit?
He held the joint out for the taking, but Deena declined.
Up here on the right, there's an old abandoned campground. It hasn't been open as long as I've been around, but there are a few good party spots or make-out spots if you know where to look. Better be careful, though. Some say the old den mother is still out there, waiting in the woods, ready to punish naughty teenagers.
Wouldn't she be dead by now? Deena asked. If the camp has been closed for so many years. He looked at her with a smile.
That kind of thing doesn't matter as much as you might think. Not around here anyway.
Deena, for the life of her, couldn't figure out what Jake meant by that.
Okay, last place I'll point out on the Haunted Haddington tour.
The car pulled to a stop along the long country road, and Jake pointed to an old gravel path, blocked by a measly rusted chain. Whatever sat beyond was obscured by a thick line of trees on the either side of the road.
Up that pathway is the old Overlook Institution, Maple Grove, probably the creepiest place imaginable.
What kind of institution? Deena asked. Do I want to know?
When the pandemic hit in the 1920s, they converted a few barns into a makeshift hospital. Kept adding on to the place over the years, but some of the patients eventually died in a fire, and the building was donated to the church. It became a place where people went to be fixed, if you know what I mean.
Deena swallowed the lump in her throat. Are you serious right now?
100%.
Jake promised, and Deena believed him.
People joke about claiming insanity to get away with crime or whatever. The Overlook was hell on earth.
When did it close?
Sometime in the 70s. A few of the patients got out over time, but nobody believed what they said happened there. The others...
He looked at Deena sympathetically.
Maybe that's enough for tonight.
Deena's jaw hit the floor. "No way!" she cried. "You can't back down now. What were you saying?" Jake looked in the rearview mirror, almost like he expected to see someone behind the car, and then he continued.
You ever hear of the Hook Man?
As Deena burst out laughing, she felt the tension in her body release. "You really had me for a second, Jake," she said through giggles. But Jake wasn't laughing. He simply looked at her with wide eyes.
The Hook Man was real. An actual killer who escaped the Overlook. Slaughtered a bunch of people using his hook hand as a weapon. The road keeps going to the other end of the hill, which used to be known as the best place to park your car, with a date. Those kids were like sitting ducks when that psycho escaped.
Deena felt her nerves building again. That's horrible. Looking at Jake, she saw it all play out. Behind him, the window shattered, giving way to a massive, blood-soaked metal hook. The hulking killer pulled Jake through the window as he clawed at the sides of the car, mangling his own hands in broken glass. Desperate to catch hold of anything that would stop the Hookman from stealing him away. "No!" Deena screamed, diving in Jake's direction. But what could she possibly do now? Just as Jake's lifeless body crashed onto the roof of the car, the Hookman returned for Deena, who screamed as the massive, nasty hook got closer and closer. A quick toot of the horn brought Deena back to reality. Jake looked at her with wide eyes and a fascinated smile.
Are you good?
Deena cleared her throat, collecting herself. Can we get around the chain? She asked. I want to see the building. Deena's curiosity surprised even herself, perhaps heightened by the first moments of true excitement for the town she now inhabited.
No way in hell am I getting any closer than this,
Jake said, placing the car into reverse and pulling back onto the road.
People who go there at night don't come back, and it's not some stupid old story.
During the day, then, will you go with me?
A few years ago, I walked over there with a group of friends. Something is seriously wrong with that place. I had nightmares for weeks.
Deena could see the very real fear in his eyes as he spoke. What did you see?
Nothing. Only the outside of the building, but it was more about what we felt. There's a lot of darkness in this town, Deena.
Yeah, picked up on that, she teased. The turn is right up here, Deena pointed through the windshield.
I know. There's practically not another main road until you hit Carpenter City.
Jake's car turned onto Skeer Street, then into Deena's driveway, where he dimmed the lights as she collected herself.
You think your mom's asleep?
Deena looked over at her new home, completely free of the glow of interior lighting. Thanks for leaving the porch light on for me, Mom, she thought to herself. But out loud, she only said, Thanks for the ride. Jake smiled and offered a fist bump.
Hopefully I didn't creep you out too much to get a good night's sleep.
Deena smiled. You definitely did, but I don't mind. It's cool to hear about the twisted history of a place like this.
Happy to help.
Jake offered a knowing and friendly smile.
And welcome to Skeer Street. You ain't seen nothing yet.